Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The blade didn't tremble against the soft skin of my throat. It was my own pulse hammering against the cold steel that threatened to sever it. I blinked, the sterile white ceiling of my hospital room replaced by the oppressive, velvet darkness of a four-poster canopy, and the man hovering above me wasn't a doctor. He was a nightmare sculpted from marble and malice. Lord Valerius Thorn, the Grand Duke of the North, the tyrant of Frost, and the antagonist of the novel I had been reading moments before my death, was currently straddling my waist. His eyes, usually described as bottomless voids of cruelty, were narrowed into slits of glowing violet mana, and the hand gripping the dagger was clenched so tight his knuckles were white. "Give me one reason," he hissed, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through my chest. "Why I shouldn't carve your treacherous heart out right now, Julian." My mind reeled. Julian. I was Julian Vane, the disposable, two-faced spy sent by the Holy Temple to seduce the villain and steal his secrets. In the original text, Julian died on page 40, flayed alive by Valerius after being caught poisoning the Duke's wine. I looked at the bedside table. The goblet was there, half empty. I had woken up 3 seconds too late. "Because," I gasped, the pressure of the blade stinging, "if you kill me, you will never find the antidote." It was a gamble, a lie mixed with truth. In the novel, the poison wasn't lethal immediately. It was a mana blocker designed to leave Valerius vulnerable to the Holy Knights. But Valerius didn't know I knew that. Valerius paused. The violet glow in his eyes flickered, betraying the chaotic storm of magic that plagued his cursed bloodline. He leaned closer, his long, silver hair cascading down to tickle my cheek, a stark contrast to the death promised in his gaze. "You admit it, then?" he whispered, almost sounding disappointed. "You are a rat sent by the temple." "I am a man who wants to live," I choked out, my survival instincts overriding the panic. "The poison isn't to kill you. It's to suppress your core so they can shackle you." But I didn't finish the dose. Valerius laughed, a dark, jagged sound devoid of humor. "You think I believe a snake that bites the hand feeding it?" "Check your flow," I challenged, staring directly into those terrifying eyes. "Your mana. It's not blocked. It's turbulent." I stopped halfway. He hesitated. For a split second, the omnipotent villain checked his internal reserves. He found the anomaly, the trace of the poison, but not enough to cripple him. It was a plot hole in the moment. Why would a spy stop? I had to fill it instantly. I realized. I lied, my voice trembling with feigned emotion, that I would rather die by your hand than live as their puppet. Valerius stared at me. The blade withdrew an inch. The air in the room, heavy with the scent of ozone and spilled wine, seemed to freeze. He was analyzing me, dissecting my soul with a gaze that had brought empires to their knees. This was the man who would eventually burn the world down out of grief and madness. And I was the pebble that started the avalanche. "You have until sunrise," Valerius said, standing up and sheathing the dagger in one fluid motion. He didn't look back as he walked toward the heavy oak doors. "If you cannot prove your use to me by dawn, Julian, I will feed you to the frost wolves piece by piece." The door slammed shut, the magical locks clicking into place. I was alive. For now. The Duchy of Thorn was less a home and more a mausoleum dedicated to the concept of winter. The walls were obsidian, the floors white marble, and the temperature hovered perpetually near freezing, a side effect of Valerius's unstable cryomancy. As Julian Vane, I possessed a body that was beautiful but frail. Pale skin, dark curls, and eyes the color of spring leaves, a visual foil to the Duke's monochrome existence. But beauty meant nothing here. The servants ignored me, likely taking bets on when I'd be executed. I spent the night not sleeping, but frantically recalling every detail of the Saintess's prayer. The novel was a tragedy masked as a hero's journey. The heroine, Saintess Alara, was a manipulative zealot who used the Duke's instability to paint him as a monster. Valerius wasn't born evil. He was cursed with dragon's blood, a mana condition that eroded sanity over time. He needed a grandiose amount of mana control to keep from exploding. The original Julian had been a simple seducer. I needed to be indispensable. When dawn broke, painting the gray sky with bruises of purple and orange, The guards dragged me to the solar. Valerius sat behind a massive desk piled with war maps. He didn't look up. "Speak," he commanded. "Your mana outbursts are synchronized with the lunar cycle," I said, my voice steady despite my shaking knees. "The temple knows this. They plan to siege the northern pass in 3 days, during the new moon, when your control is weakest." Valerius finally looked up. He set his quill down. "That is a state secret. Even my generals do not know the specifics of my condition. I know where the temple hides their null stones." I pressed on. "And I know how to stabilize your core without their holy medicine." Valerius stood, moving around the desk with the grace of a stalking panther. He stopped in front of me, grabbing my chin and forcing my head up. His fingers were ice cold. "You are a scholar of arts, Julian, not a mage. How do you know of core stabilization?" This was the danger zone. If I seemed too knowledgeable, I was a threat. If I knew too little, I was useless. "Because I watched you," I whispered, leaning into the touch rather than flinching. "For months. I watched you suffer in silence while they laughed at your madness in the capital. I read every forbidden text in the temple archives before I was sent here. Not to kill you, but to understand you." It was the romanticized nonsense the readers of the novel had wished the original Julian had said. But in this reality, it hung in the air, heavy and significant. Valerius studied me, his thumb brushing over my lower lip. "You have a silver tongue. It is a pity I will have to cut it out if you are lying." "Test me," I challenged. "Take me to the pass. Let me show you the ambush point. And if it is a trap, then you can kill me there. No walls to hide the blood." Valerius searched my eyes for deceit. He found only the desperation of a man trying to rewrite a tragedy. "Prepare the carriage," he called out to the empty room. Shadows coalesced into guards who bowed and vanished. He looked back at me, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. "You ride with me, Julian. If an arrow flies my way, you will be the shield." The journey to the northern pass took 2 days. 2 days trapped in a carriage with a man who radiated cold so intense that frost formed on the windows. It was a slow burn of psychological warfare. Valerius ignored me for hours, reading documents, only to suddenly ask probing questions about my past, the past of a character I barely knew. I wove lies and truths together, painting a picture of a disillusioned orphan taken in by the temple, groomed to be a honey trap. "They taught you to seduce," Valerius noted dryly on the second night, watching me struggle to warm my hands over a small magical heater. "Yet you sit as far from me as possible. I am trying to preserve my life, my lord. Proximity seems to irritate you. Your betrayal irritates me. Your presence is tolerable." It was the closest thing to a compliment I was going to get. Suddenly, the carriage lurched violently. Screams erupted outside. An explosion of light, holy magic, shattered the window. Valerius moved faster than humanly possible. He didn't dive for cover. He lunged across the carriage, shielding my body with his own as the roof was torn open by a spell. Glass and would rain down on his armored back. He shoved me down to the floorboards. "Stay down." He kicked the door open and stepped out into the snow, his mana erupting like a supernova. I peeked over the rim of the broken carriage. We were surrounded by white-clad paladins. The ambush I had predicted. But they were early. "Heretics," a paladin shouted. "Release the boy and surrender, monster of the north." Valerius laughed, and the sound made the ground tremble. Ice spikes, massive and jagged, erupted from the earth, impaling 3 knights instantly. He was a force of nature, a blizzard given human form. But I saw what they didn't. His left hand was trembling. The black rot, the curse, was eating at his nerves. He was using too much power. I scrambled out of the carriage. I couldn't fight, but I knew the script. The paladin leader, Sir Kale, carried a staff topped with a sunstone. It amplified holy magic, which disrupted Valerius's dark mana. "Valerius!" I screamed, my voice tearing through the howling wind. "The staff!" "Shatter the red gem on the staff." Valerius didn't question me. He pivoted, ignoring a sword that slashed his arm, and unleashed a concentrated beam of frost at Sir Kale. The beam missed the knight, but struck the staff perfectly. The gem shattered. The suppression field vanished. Valerius unleashed a wave of cold so absolute that the remaining knights froze mid-scream, turned into statues of ice in a heartbeat. Silence fell over the snow-covered valley. Valerius stood amidst the carnage, his chest heaving. The violet glow in his eyes was erratic, pulsing dangerously. He turned to me. He looked like a demon, blood dripping from his arm, surrounded by frozen corpses. He took a step toward me and stumbled. I ran to him, catching him as he fell to his knees. He was freezing, his body temperature dropping to fatal levels, the backlash of the curse. "Get away," he rasped, his teeth chattering. I cannot control it. "I will freeze you." "No," I said firmly. I ripped off my gloves and placed my warm hands on his cheeks. In the lore, dragon's blood required grounding. It required a human anchor. "Look at me, Valerius. Focus on the heat." "You fool." I pulled his head to my chest, wrapping my coat around his shivering frame. I didn't have magic, but I had will. "I am not leaving. You saved me. I'm returning the favor." We stayed like that in the snow, the villain and the traitor, huddled together against the encroaching dark. Slowly, the erratic pulsing of his mana calmed. The deadly cold receded. When he finally looked up, the madness was gone from his eyes, replaced by a profound, terrified confusion. "Why?" he whispered. "You could have run. You could have let Kale kill me. And let the world be boring." I managed a weak smile, my own teeth chattering now. "Besides, I told you, I'm on your side." Valerius stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, hesitantly, he raised a hand and wiped a smudge of soot from my cheek. The touch was gentle, reverent. "Then you belong to me now, Julian," he murmured, the possessiveness dark and heavy in his tone. "If you save the monster, you must keep him. There is no going back." "I know," I breathed. The months that followed were a blur of political maneuvering and quiet intimacy. We weren't lovers in the traditional sense, not yet. We were conspirators, partners. I used my knowledge of the future to dismantle the temple's influence. I exposed the saintess's embezzlement, intercepted the crown's spies, and revolutionized the duchy's trade routes using modern economic theories I remembered from my past life. Valerius watched me through it all, his gaze evolving from suspicion to fascination, and finally, to a burning hunger. He became my shadow. If a noble looked at me with disdain, that noble disappeared. If I frowned at a dish, the chef was replaced. It was a suffocating, intoxicating devotion. But the climax of the novel was approaching. The Day of Judgment. In the original story, this was when Valerius finally succumbed to the curse and destroyed the capital. The trigger was supposed to be the death of his younger sister, a character who had been hidden away. But in this timeline, I had already moved her to a safe house. The temple had no leverage. Or so I thought. The invitation to the imperial ball arrived on black parchment. It was a summons from the emperor himself. A trap. "We aren't going," Valerius stated, throwing the invitation into the fire. "We have to," I argued, standing by the fireplace. "If we don't, they declare you a traitor and march the entire imperial army north. We need to face them. We need to show them you are sane." "I am not sane, Julian." Valerius snapped, slamming his hand against the mantel. "I am holding on to sanity by a thread, and you are holding the other end. If they hurt you, they won't." I stepped closer, placing my hand over his on the stone. "Because the tyrant of frost will be there." He looked at me, his eyes softening. He turned his hand over, interlacing his fingers with mine. "You play a dangerous game, my love." My love, the words hung in the air, unspoken until now. The imperial ballroom was a sea of gold and silk, a facade of civility hiding a pit of vipers. When Valerius and I entered, silence swept across the hall. He wore black military dress, metals gleaming, a predator among prey. I walked beside him in deep blue velvet, chin held high. We danced the opening waltz. Valerius's hand was firm on my waist, his eyes never leaving mine. "They are staring," he whispered. "Let them," I replied. "They are afraid." "Good." The music stopped abruptly. Saintess Alara stepped forward from the crowd, surrounded by paladins. She looked angelic, bathed in light magic. "Valerius Thorn," she proclaimed, her voice magically amplified. "You harbor a heretic. That man beside you is a spy, a traitor to the holy temple." The crowd gasped. Valerius didn't flinch. He didn't let go of me. "He is my consort," Valerius said, his voice cutting through the hall like a razor. "And he is under my protection. He is a poisoner." Alara shrieked, pointing an accusing finger. We have proof. He was sent to kill you, Duke. He deceived us all. She snapped her fingers. A projection appeared in the air, a magical recording. It was the original Julian, months ago, accepting the vial of poison from a high priest. Asterisk, I will make him trust me, and then I will pour this down his throat. Asterisk, the recording said. The murmurs in the crowd turned into shouts. I froze. I hadn't known this recording existed. I looked at Valerius. This was it. The moment of doubt. The logic of the plot hole I had fixed, why he trusted me, was unraveling. The evidence of my betrayal was undeniable. Valerius looked at the image, then down at me. His expression was unreadable. Is this true? He asked softly. The man in that recording is dead, I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. I am not him. Not anymore. It was a metaphorical truth, but would he understand? Alara smiled triumphantly. See? He admits it. Seize him. 2 paladins lunged for me. Valerius moved. He didn't use magic. He drew his ceremonial saber and decapitated the first paladin before the man could touch me. The head rolled across the polished floor. Screams erupted. Valerius. I grabbed his arm. Stop. This is what they want. They want you to break. They touched you. Valerius snarled, his eyes glowing so bright they were blinding. The temperature in the room plummeted. Wine glasses shattered. The windows frosted over. They dared to touch what is mine. He was going to kill you. Alara screamed, backing away. Why do you defend him? Valerius turned to the trembling saintess, pointing his bloodied sword at her throat. The entire nobility of the empire held its breath. Because, Valerius said, his voice a calm, terrifying void. Even if he held the knife to my heart, I would guide his hand to ensure he didn't miss. His betrayal is worth more than your loyalty. He turned to me, ignoring the chaos, the guards rushing in, the emperor shouting orders. He cupped my face with a bloodstained hand. Let them come, he whispered against my forehead. Let them all come. I will freeze hell itself before I let them take you again. I realized then that I hadn't just changed the plot. I had shattered it. The villain hadn't been redeemed. He had simply found a new obsession. And as I looked into his chaotic, loving, terrifying eyes, I knew I was doomed. Not to die, but to live alongside a monster who loved me more than life itself. Burn it, I whispered back, surrendering to the narrative we had built. Burn it all down, Valerius. And as the ice storm consumed the ballroom, burying the Golden Empire in eternal winter, the villain kissed the traitor, sealing a pact that would terrify historians for centuries to come. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, not by removing his fangs, but by teaching him who to bite. If you enjoyed seeing Valerius burn the world for his lover, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who tried to kill you if he became your only shield against the world? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Tall, muscular, long silver hair, glowing violet eyes, wearing black military uniform with silver epaulets, holding a bloody saber, protective dominant pose, intense expression. Man 2. Slender, dark curly hair, green eyes, wearing blue velvet noble attire, standing close to man 1, looking up with trust and fear mixed. Background is a grand ballroom freezing over. Ice spikes erupting from floor, shattered glass, panicked nobles and background blurred, dramatic blue and white lighting, magical aura, cinematic composition, sharp focus, intricate details.